The Titan Research Station was humanity's most ambitious scientific outpost, a titanium and carbon fiber marvel suspended above Saturn's largest moon like a delicate spider's web against the infinite darkness. Jack Reynolds knew every inch of the station as intimately as a sailor knows his ship. At 42, he was a veteran of humanity's most challenging space exploration efforts, with a career that had seen more dead ends than breakthroughs. The station's main observatory was a cathedral of technology, its curved walls lined with quantum sensors, gravitational wave detectors, and communication arrays that could pick up the faintest whispers from the deepest reaches of space. Most days, it was a temple of silence and routine. Today would be different. Jack's fingers danced across holographic displays, his eyes narrowed behind augmented reality lenses that fed him a constant stream of data. He'd been tracking an anomalous signal for weeks, a series of electromagnetic pulses that defied conventional explanation. Unlike the usual cosmic background noise or the occasional burst of radiation from distant stellar events, this signal had a pattern, a deliberate, almost mathematical precision that nagged at the back of his mind. "Dr. Reynolds," came a voice from the station's AI interface, anomalous signal strength increasing. Quantum coherence at 78.3% and rising. He didn't respond immediately. Jack had learned long ago that jumping to conclusions was the fastest way to scientific embarrassment. The station's crew, a mix of international scientists, engineers, and support personnel, had grown used to his methodical approach. Where others saw random data, Jack saw potential stories waiting to be unraveled. The holographic display began to shift, its usual blue-green hues bleeding into a complex geometric pattern that seemed to pulse with an internal light. Jack leaned forward, his heart rate quickening. This was no computer glitch. This was something else entirely. Dr. Elena Martinez, the station's lead quantum physicist, burst into the observatory. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, her eyes wild with excitement. "Jack, are you seeing this?" "Seeing it. I'm living it," he muttered, his fingers flying across the interface. The geometric patterns were resolving into something more. A complex mathematical sequence that seemed to be responding to their observation. It was as if the signal itself was aware, was watching, was testing. The station's communication systems crackled to life. Normally reserved mission control operators now spoke with barely contained tension. "Titan Station, confirm visual on current signal anomaly. We're getting impossible readings down here." Jack's mind raced. In his 20 years of space research, he'd seen countless false alarms. Signals that promised breakthrough, but ultimately proved to be nothing more than cosmic static. But this was different. The geometric patterns began to resolve into a series of mathematical equations that seemed to dance across the display. They weren't random. They weren't natural. Each equation built upon the last, creating a complexity that suggested, no, demanded, intelligence behind the transmission. "It's a message," Elena whispered, her scientific skepticism momentarily overwhelmed by pure wonder. Jack nodded slowly. "More than a message. It's a challenge." The station around them seemed to hold its breath. Outside the reinforced windows, Saturn's rings stretched across the void, a reminder of how small they were, how vast the universe remained. Yet something out there was reaching out, communicating, testing. The final equation resolved with a sudden burst of light that momentarily blinded the station's sensors. When the display cleared, a single line of text remained. "Humanity, prove your worth." Jack Reynolds laughed, a sharp, unexpected sound that echoed through the observatory. 20 years of searching, of hoping, of believing that humanity was more than just a tiny spark in the cosmic darkness. And now something was asking them to show their true potential. The greatest adventure in human history was about to begin. The United Nations Special Scientific Assembly convened less than 48 hours after the Titan station's discovery. It was a circus of brilliance and ego, with the world's most exceptional minds crammed into a secure conference room that felt more like a pressure cooker of competing intellects. Jack Reynolds stood at the center of the storm, the transmissions data projected around him in a holographic maelstrom of mathematical complexity. To his left, Emma Rodriguez leaned against the wall, her arms crossed, a complex algorithm tattoo peeking out from her rolled-up sleeve. Marcus Williams sat rigidly, military posture unchanged even in civilian clothing, his fingers tapping a precise rhythm on the conference table. Aiden Kim stood apart from the group, his eyes darting between the projections, seeing patterns where others saw chaos. "It's not just a message," Jack announced, cutting through the cacophony of scientific debate. "It's a multi-layered puzzle designed to test something more than our ability to decode." Dr. Helen Berkowitz, a veteran cryptographer from MIT, scoffed. "Designed? By whom? This could be nothing more than an elaborate natural phenomenon." Emma stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Natural phenomena don't construct recursive mathematical algorithms that adapt to our solution attempts." She manipulated the hologram, revealing layers of complexity that seemed to shift and change as they watched. The room fell silent. Aiden spoke up, his voice surprisingly quiet. "It's learning. Every time we approach a solution, the underlying mathematical structure subtly changes. It's almost like—" He paused, searching for the right words. "It's like the message is studying us as much as we're studying it." Marcus leaned forward, his military background showing in his analytical approach. "We need to treat this like an intelligence test, but not just for decoding, for understanding. The signal isn't just presenting a problem, it's watching how we solve it." Jack nodded. The team he'd assembled was unconventional by design. Emma Rodriguez wasn't just a quantum cryptographer. She was a former hacker who'd made her reputation breaking supposedly unbreakable encryption systems. Marcus Williams had transitioned from military strategic analysis to theoretical mathematics, bringing a unique perspective of pattern recognition and strategic thinking. Aiden Kim was a prodigy who'd been rejected by multiple academic institutions for being too unpredictable, too creative to fit into traditional research models. Their first breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a heated argument about computational approaches, Aiden threw a chess piece across the room in frustration. The piece's trajectory caught Emma's eye. A split-second calculation that revealed a hidden pattern in the transmission's mathematical structure. "Wait," she said, her fingers flying across a holographic interface. "What if we're approaching this wrong? It's not just about solving the equation. It's about understanding the method of solution." The team worked in shifts that blurred the line between day and night. Massive computational arrays worked alongside human intuition. They discovered the transmission wasn't a single puzzle, but a series of interconnected challenges that seemed to evolve based on their approach. Global scientific institutions watched with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Military organizations prepared contingency plans. The transmission represented the ultimate unknown, a potential first contact that defied every established protocol. On the seventh day, something changed. The mathematical patterns began to resolve into something more than abstract equations. Glimpses of complex geometric structures emerged, hints of a communication method that transcended traditional language. They weren't just decoding a message, they were learning an entirely new way of thinking. "It's testing our adaptability," Marcus said, his voice a mixture of excitement and concern. "Not just our intelligence, our capacity to grow, to change, to understand something fundamentally alien." Jack looked at his team, a group of brilliant misfits who represented humanity's most extraordinary potential. They were no longer just scientists. They were humanity's first line of communication, with something beyond their comprehension. The final line of the current transmission flickered into existence, a challenge that sent a chill through the room. "Did no estirate your species potential? The next stage begins now." The pressure cooker of scientific investigation reached a breaking point on the 10th day. What had begun as a collaborative effort had devolved into a marathon of human endurance, pushing the team to their absolute limits. Aiden Kim stood at the holographic projection wall, his reflection a ghostly outline against the swirling mathematical patterns. He hadn't slept in 36 hours, sustained by a cocktail of caffeine and pure intellectual obsession. Across the room, Emma Rodriguez nursed her fifth espresso, her fingers trembling slightly from exhaustion and overstimulation. "It's not just testing our problem-solving," Aiden muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "It's testing our breaking point." Marcus Williams entered the room, a stack of classified military reports under his arm. His entrance broke the tension momentarily. "We've got external analysis," he announced, spreading the documents across the main conference table. "Every major scientific institution is seeing variations of the same phenomenon. This transmission isn't just targeting our team. It's a global challenge." Jack Reynolds looked up, his eyes bloodshot but alert. The transmission had transformed from a mysterious signal to a living, breathing puzzle that seemed to anticipate their every move. Each solved equation revealed another layer of complexity, like an infinite Russian nesting doll of mathematical challenges. "Global," Emma interjected. "More like universal. These patterns, they're not just mathematical. They're a language of pure logic that transcends human computational thinking." The latest challenge had pushed them to the edge of scientific understanding. The transmission now presented scenarios that required not just mathematical solutions, but holistic problem-solving that integrated quantum mechanics, cultural anthropology, and systems theory. It was as if the alien intelligence was deliberately forcing humanity to break down disciplinary barriers. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a particularly heated argument about approach strategies, Aiden suddenly went silent. The team turned to look at him. His eyes were distant, processing something beyond the immediate conversation. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," he said softly. The room held its breath. "This isn't a test of individual intelligence," Aiden continued. "It's a test of collective problem-solving. Each challenge is designed to force us to collaborate in ways we've never imagined." Marcus leaned forward, his military strategist's mind immediately engaging. "Explain." Aiden began manipulating the holographic display. The mathematical patterns shifted, revealing a complex network of interconnected solutions. "Look, each solution we've attempted has been fundamentally limited by our individual perspectives. A mathematician sees one path, a quantum physicist another, a military strategist yet another. But the transmission wants us to see beyond those limitations." Emma caught on quickly. "It's testing our ability to communicate, to integrate different ways of thinking." The next challenge appeared, more complex than anything they'd seen before. It wasn't just an equation or a problem to solve. It was a multi-dimensional scenario that required simultaneous solutions across different domains of human knowledge. Jack watched his team transform. The competitive edge that had initially divided them began to dissolve. They were no longer competing to solve the puzzle first. They were learning to solve it together. Global communication networks lit up. Scientific teams from Beijing to Buenos Aires, from Moscow to Mumbai, began sharing data in ways that defied traditional academic boundaries. The transmission had become more than a scientific challenge. It was a catalyst for human collaboration. "It's watching us," Marcus said, a note of wonder in his typically stoic voice. "Every time we break through our own limitations, the challenge becomes more complex." A new message flickered into existence. Collective intelligence, GED. Prepare, FORDEPR, integration. The team exchanged looks of both excitement and trepidation. They were no longer just scientists. They were humanity's first true ambassadors to something beyond their comprehension. Aiden looked at the transmission, a smile slowly spreading across his exhausted face. "We're being evaluated," he said, "and I think we're passing." Outside the research facility, the world held its breath. Something extraordinary was happening. Humanity was being challenged to become more than it had ever been before. The breakthrough came at 3:47 a.m., in a moment of pure, chaotic inspiration. The team had been arguing for hours, holographic displays spinning around them like a tornado of mathematical complexity. Emma Rodriguez was mid-rant, her hands gesticulating wildly, when Aiden Kim suddenly went completely still. The conversation stopped. "Wait," Aiden muttered. "What if we're not solving the problem? What if we're becoming the solution?" Jack Reynolds leaned forward, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Explain." Aiden's fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling apart the transmission's mathematical structure like a child dismantling an intricate puzzle. "Every approach we've taken has been linear, computational. But this transmission, it's alive. It's responsive. It's not just processing information, it's experiencing it." Marcus Williams, ever the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow. "Experience isn't a scientific metric." "It is now," Emma interjected, her quantum cryptography background suddenly aligning with Aiden's radical thinking. The team had been treating the transmission as a problem to be solved. Now they began to see it as a living system to be understood. The mathematical patterns weren't just equations. They were a form of communication that transcended traditional language, a pure expression of intelligence that adapted and grew with each interaction. Jack pulled up the global data feeds. Scientific teams worldwide had hit the same wall. Brilliant minds frustrated by a puzzle that seemed to change the moment they thought they'd found a solution. But this team was different. They'd stopped trying to break the code and started trying to understand its fundamental nature. "Quantum entanglement," Emma said suddenly, "but not as we've ever understood it before." She began constructing a new computational model that was less about solving and more about experiencing. Traditional quantum computing relied on binary states, 0 and 1. This new approach suggested something entirely different, a computational method that existed in a state of perpetual potential. Aiden's eyes lit up. "It's not about finding the right answer. It's about creating a system that can ask the right questions." The first prototype took shape over the next 36 hours. It wasn't a computer in any traditional sense. It was a hybrid system that combined quantum processing with neural network learning, designed to be as unpredictable and adaptive as the transmission itself. Global scientific institutions watched in a mixture of awe and terror. This wasn't just a breakthrough in communication. It was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligence could function. "We're creating a language," Marcus realized, his strategic mind connecting the dots. "A way of communicating that isn't bound by human limitations." The prototype, which they began calling the Adaptive Response Interface, or ARI, started to generate something unprecedented. Not just solutions to the transmission's challenges, but entirely new ways of perceiving those challenges. On the fourth day of development, something extraordinary happened. ARI began to generate mathematical sequences that seemed to anticipate the transmission's next move. More than that, it began to generate responses that were less about solving and more about understanding. It was creating a dialogue. "It's not just responding," Jack said, his voice a mixture of wonder and scientific caution. "It's communicating." The global scientific community watched in real time as the team pushed the boundaries of human understanding. This was more than a technological breakthrough. It was a fundamental expansion of what humanity considered possible. A new message appeared on the primary display. "Evolutionary potential recognized. Prepare for integration." The team exchanged looks of both excitement and profound uncertainty. They had done more than solve a puzzle. They had created a new way of thinking, a bridge between human intelligence and something far more complex. Aiden looked at the display, a slight smile playing on his lips. "We're not just talking to something alien," he said. "We're learning how to think alien." Outside the research facility, the first hints of a new dawn began to break. Humanity stood on the precipice of its greatest adventure, a journey into a form of intelligence that would forever change their understanding of existence itself. The moment of first contact defied every scientific prediction, every military contingency plan, every human expectation. It began with a subtle distortion in the fabric of space near Saturn's orbit. Satellite networks and deep space observatories captured the anomaly simultaneously, a ripple in reality that seemed to fold and unfold like impossible origami. The Adaptive Response Interface, ARI, went into overdrive, its quantum processors humming with an intensity that made the research facility's entire electrical grid fluctuate. Jack Reynolds gripped the edge of the control console, his knuckles white. "Everyone stay calm," he announced, though his own voice betrayed a mix of terror and exhilaration. Emma Rodriguez's fingers flew across multiple holographic interfaces. "It's not an invasion," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "It's an arrival." The construct that emerged was neither ship nor station, neither solid nor entirely energy. It existed in a state of quantum possibility that defied human comprehension. Massive and yet seemingly weightless, it pulsed with a light that wasn't light, a radiation of pure information that seemed to penetrate computer screens and human consciousness alike. Global communication networks went haywire. Military installations across the planet shifted to maximum alert. But this was no conventional threat. The construct made no aggressive moves. Instead, it simply existed. A silent, massive presence that radiated an intelligence beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. "It's responding to ARI," Aiden said, his voice a mixture of scientific wonder and primal fear. "Not just responding, communicating." Marcus Williams, typically the most composed of the group, felt a chill run down his spine. His military training had prepared him for countless scenarios, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment of first contact. The construct began to transform. Its surface, if surface was even the right word, started to resolve into complex geometric patterns that shifted and changed with each passing second. Mathematical equations began to materialize, not on screens, but seemingly in the air itself, suspended like living languages. "It's creating a translation matrix," Emma breathed. "It's trying to communicate in a way we can understand." Global leaders watched in real time. The United Nations emergency session had been in continuous operation for 72 hours. Military commanders from every major nation sat with fingers hovering over potential response protocols. But no one knew how to respond to something that wasn't an attack, wasn't a threat, something that simply was. The first communication came not as words, but as a pure burst of mathematical possibility. ARI intercepted and began to translate, its quantum processors working at speeds that made traditional supercomputers look like ancient calculators. Potential recognized. Humanity evaluated. Next stage initiated. Aiden's hands shook as he helped interpret the transmission. "It's not just a message," he explained to the stunned room. "It's a complete informational ecosystem. Each symbol contains layers of meaning that would take years to fully unpack." The construct began to project images. If images were the right word, they were more like living memories, complex scenarios that showed glimpses of potential futures, civilizations rising and falling, technological breakthroughs, moments of collective human achievement and profound collective failure. "It's showing us our potential," Jack realized. "Not just what we are, what we could be." Military advisors demanded action. Political leaders argued about response protocols. But the research team understood something profound. This was not a moment for traditional human conflict. This was a moment of evaluation. The construct's presence began to affect technology globally. Communications became clearer. Computer systems worldwide experienced unprecedented stability. It was as if the mere presence of this alien intelligence was solving problems humanity hadn't even recognized. "We're being judged," Marcus said quietly. "Not by our weapons, not by our technology, but by our potential." Another message resolved. Humanity is TND's ATTHETHRESHOLD. Prove your quality. Worth. Outside the research facility, people around the world looked to the sky. Something had changed. Something fundamental. The boundary between impossible and possible had just been rewritten. Humanity's greatest test was about to begin. The galactic crucible began without warning. One moment, the research facility was a hub of controlled scientific investigation. The next, reality itself seemed to twist. The walls of the complex dissolved into a holographic landscape that defied every known law of physics. Jack Reynolds, Emma Rodriguez, Marcus Williams, and Aiden Kim found themselves separated, each placed in a different scenario that pushed the limits of human comprehension. Jack materialized in a simulation of global catastrophe. Cities crumbled. Resources dwindled. Humanity faced extinction-level challenges that required impossible choices. Populations of entire continents hung in the balance, and each decision carried devastating consequences. Emma's scenario was a complex network of technological and ecological challenges. She had to balance advanced technological development with environmental preservation, navigating a web of interconnected systems that seemed designed to create impossible trade-offs. Marcus confronted a series of geopolitical and military scenarios that tested the very essence of human cooperation and conflict resolution. Diplomatic solutions required levels of empathy and strategic thinking that went far beyond traditional military training. Aiden's challenge was perhaps the most abstract. He faced a pure informational landscape where communication itself was the primary challenge, a realm where language, mathematics, and consciousness blended into a single complex problem-solving environment. The construct was watching, evaluating, testing. This isn't a test, Aiden realized first. It's a simulation of humanity's potential. Each scenario adapted in real time to their responses. There were no fixed solutions, only evolving challenges that responded to their collective and individual choices. The team quickly understood that they weren't just solving problems. They were demonstrating humanity's capacity for adaptation, empathy, and complex reasoning. Jack's global catastrophe scenario required him to make choices that balanced immediate survival with long-term species preservation. A pandemic threatened to wipe out 70% of the human population. Traditional responses would save the most immediate lives, but destroy long-term genetic diversity. His solutions had to be creative, looking beyond conventional survival strategies. Emma's technological challenge pushed the boundaries of sustainable development. She had to develop technologies that could address climate change, resource scarcity, and population growth simultaneously. Each solution created new challenges, forcing her to think in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Marcus confronted scenarios that tested the very nature of human conflict. Diplomatic challenges that required understanding multiple cultural perspectives, finding common ground in seemingly irreconcilable differences. His military background became both a strength and a limitation. Aiden's informational landscape became the most critical. He realized the challenge was about communication itself, how humanity could develop methods of understanding that transcended linguistic and cultural barriers. The team began to communicate, their individual challenges somehow interconnected despite their apparent separation. They weren't just solving individual problems. They were demonstrating a collective intelligence that was greater than the sum of its parts. Global monitoring systems picked up traces of the simulation. Scientific institutions worldwide watched in a mixture of awe and terror as humanity's potential was put to the ultimate test. A message appeared, floating in the informational space. Solving. Transcend individual limitations. Jack understood first. This wasn't just a test of individual brilliance. It was an evaluation of humanity's capacity for collective intelligence. Each challenge was designed to force collaboration, to push beyond traditional problem-solving approaches. The scenarios became more complex, more challenging. The construct was learning as much about humanity as humanity was learning about itself. Emma's technological solutions began to inform Marcus's diplomatic strategies. Aiden's communication breakthroughs provided insights into Jack's survival scenarios. They were no longer working individually. They were becoming something more. As the simulation reached its most intense point, the team realized the true nature of the challenge. It wasn't about finding the perfect solution. It was about demonstrating the potential for continuous adaptation, for growth, for understanding. The final message resolved with crystal clarity. Humanity's potential reorganize. Prepare for the next stage of evaluation. Outside the simulation, the alien construct pulsed with a light that was not light, a pure expression of informational potential. Humanity had been weighed, measured, and found to be something extraordinary. The final test stripped away every technological shield, every scientific pretense. It was a pure moment of moral and existential challenge that would define humanity's worth. The team materialized in a scenario that defied rational explanation. They stood together, but not as individuals. They were connected, their consciousness expanded, their individual thoughts merging into a collective awareness that was both terrifying and sublime. Before them stretched a landscape of impossible choices. On one side, a massive population faced imminent destruction. Millions of lives hung in a delicate balance. Traditional problem-solving would suggest a straightforward solution: save the maximum number of lives through immediate, decisive action. But this was different. The scenario presented multiple layers of complexity. Each potential solution carried profound moral implications that went far beyond simple survival. They could save the immediate population, but at the cost of future human potential. They could preserve genetic diversity, but only by making choices that would seem monstrous by current ethical standards. Emma was the first to fully comprehend the depth of the challenge. "It's not about saving lives," she said, her voice resonating through their shared consciousness. "It's about understanding the value of life itself." Marcus analyzed the strategic implications. Survival wasn't just about numbers. It was about preserving the essence of human potential, the capacity for growth, for empathy, for transcendence. Aiden saw the deeper pattern. The test was measuring something far more complex than survival instinct. It was evaluating humanity's capacity for collective decision-making, for finding solutions that transcended individual or even species-level survival. Jack understood the ultimate stakes. This was more than a test of their current civilization. It was an evaluation of humanity's evolutionary potential. The choices became increasingly complex. Save an immediate population of millions, but eliminate their potential for future scientific and cultural development. Preserve genetic diversity by making choices that would seem cruel by current moral standards. Sacrifice immediate survival for long-term species potential. Each decision created a cascade of consequences that rippled through their collective consciousness. They were no longer making choices as individuals. They were experiencing the entire potential trajectory of human existence. Global communication networks picked up traces of the test. Around the world, people experienced a collective moment of existential awareness. Something profound was happening. A test that went beyond any single nation, any single culture. The alien construct observed, its presence a pure form of informational potential that defied human comprehension. Their collective consciousness began to generate solutions that were neither purely logical nor entirely emotional. They were finding a third way, a method of problem-solving that integrated multiple perspectives, multiple potential futures. "We are not defined by our ability to survive," Aiden said, his thoughts resonating through their shared awareness. "We are defined by our capacity to understand." Marcus saw the military implications. This was a form of conflict resolution that went beyond traditional strategic thinking. It was about finding common ground in seemingly irreconcilable scenarios. Emma recognized the technological challenge. The solutions they were generating transcended current scientific understanding. They were creating potential futures, not just responding to immediate challenges. Jack understood the ultimate stakes. This was humanity's moment of definition. The final choice crystallized with brutal clarity. Preserve the current population at the cost of future potential, or sacrifice immediate survival for a more complex, more evolved future. Their collective consciousness found a solution that was neither one nor the other. It was something entirely new. A method of problem-solving that created potential rather than simply responding to existing challenges. The alien construct pulsed with what could only be described as anticipation. A message resolved in their collective consciousness. Humanity's true potential REVALED, transcendence, recognized. Around the world, people experienced a moment of collective awareness. Something had changed. Humanity had been evaluated and found to be something extraordinary. The boundary between impossible and possible had just been rewritten. The moment of transformation began with a silence more profound than any sound humanity had ever experienced. Jack Reynolds opened his eyes to a reality that was both familiar and utterly alien. The research facility remained standing, yet everything had changed. The team, Jack, Emma, Marcus, and Aiden, stood together, their consciousness forever altered by the experience they had just undergone. The alien construct that had challenged humanity hung in space near Saturn, no longer a threat or a mystery, but a bridge to something incomprehensible. Global communication networks erupted with a collective realization. Humanity had been tested, and humanity had passed. "We're not the same," Emma said, her voice carrying a weight that transcended physical sound. The quantum entanglement of their shared consciousness had fundamentally changed them. They were still individual humans, but now with an expanded understanding that defied previous limitations. Aiden looked at their hands, seemingly normal, yet now capable of processing information in ways that would have been impossible mere days ago. "We didn't just communicate with something alien," he said. "We became something more." The construct began to transform. It wasn't descending or approaching. It was revealing. Complex geometric patterns unfolded like living mathematics, showing glimpses of civilizations, technologies, and potential futures that human minds had never conceived. Marcus, his military strategic mind now expanded beyond traditional thinking, understood first. "This isn't an invasion," he said. "It's an invitation." Around the world, people experienced a collective moment of awareness. Scientific breakthroughs began to cascade. Medical technologies that had seemed decades away suddenly became possible. Environmental solutions emerged that balanced human needs with planetary preservation. Technological innovations appeared that seemed to bend the very laws of physics. The alien construct was more than a visitor. It was a catalyst. Jack realized the true nature of their challenge. Humanity hadn't just been tested. They had been awakened to their own potential. The transmission, the challenges, the entire experience was a method of evaluation that went beyond simple first contact. A final message resolved across global communication networks. Humanity recognized potential UNOCKED. Cosmic integration begins. The team found themselves at the center of a transformation that would redefine human existence. They were no longer just scientists, no longer just individuals. They were ambassadors to a larger cosmic community. Governments scrambled to understand. Military installations stood down. Scientific institutions worked in unprecedented collaboration. The boundaries that had previously divided humanity, national, cultural, ideological, began to dissolve in the face of this collective awakening. The construct began to share knowledge, not through traditional communication, but through a method that was part mathematics, part consciousness, part pure potential. Technological solutions to climate change emerged. Medical breakthroughs that could eliminate previously incurable diseases became possible. Energy solutions that could transform human civilization appeared. "We're not being conquered," Emma explained to stunned global leaders. "We're being invited to grow." Aiden saw the deeper pattern. This wasn't about technology or scientific advancement. It was about humanity's capacity for understanding, for evolution, for transcendence. Marcus recognized the strategic implications. Humanity was being offered a place in a cosmic community far more complex and interconnected than anyone had ever imagined. The alien construct began to integrate with human technology, not by replacing, but by expanding. Quantum communication networks emerged. Computational systems became living, adaptive entities. The boundary between technology and consciousness began to blur. Global leaders gathered, not to discuss conflict, but to plan humanity's next steps. The team, Jack, Emma, Marcus, and Aiden, found themselves at the center of this transformation, bridge builders between humanity's past and its extraordinary future. As the first day of this new era dawned, people around the world looked to the sky with a sense of wonder that replaced fear. Humanity had been challenged. Humanity had responded. And humanity had proven itself to be something far more extraordinary than anyone had ever imagined. The abyss was no longer a barrier. It was an invitation. Mankind's greatest gambit had succeeded.